we need to talk about what's happening to board gaming right now because something fundamental has shifted. And I'm not talking about normal evolution, I'm talking about a complete philosophical transformation in how games are designed, funded, and produced.
Yeah, and I think most people don't realize it yet because the surface metrics look great. The market keeps growing. Revenues are projected to double from $15.82 billion in 2025 to nearly $32 billion by 2032. On paper, everything looks amazing, but we've been digging deeper, and the reality underneath those growth numbers is pretty sobering. We're producing more games than ever, but the proportion of genuinely excellent games is actually declining.
Right, so we started this whole investigation thinking maybe we were just being nostalgic, you know? Like, are we just getting old and grumpy about board games? But after we played through a bunch of releases from 2024 and 2025, looked at what's actually dominating the hotness charts, and tracked where the money is flowing, I mean, the evidence is overwhelming. The golden age of board gaming is genuinely over. And I think we need to define what we mean by that, because it's important context.
Okay, but before we get too doom and gloom here, let's define what we even mean by golden age. Because to us, that period was roughly 1995 through 2014. Think about it. You've got Settlers of Catan arriving in 1995 and revolutionizing what European-style games could be. Then you've got Reiner Knizia absolutely dominating the design space with games like Tigris and Euphrates, Raw, Modern Art, all these games that assumed players had brains, you know? They didn't hold your hand. They didn't have tutorial modes or simplified difficulty levels.
Exactly, and that's what I'm talking about. In our sessions with the original Tigris and Euphrates, which honestly we dug up because we wanted to remind ourselves what real design looked like, we kept discovering these layers of strategic depth that just kept revealing themselves. Every rule served a purpose. Nothing was decorative. The 4 colors representing different civilizations, the monument building mechanic, the auction system using the same cards that drive gameplay. You play it and you think you understand, and then 3 plays later you realize there's this entire level of civilization management you weren't even considering.
Yeah, and compare that to, and I say this with love, so many modern releases where it feels like the game exists to justify the component count rather than the other way around. We started looking at the deluxe reprints flooding the market, and it became clear that publishers have figured out they can monetize nostalgia by re-releasing established games with premium components. Awaken Realms released Castles of Burgundy Special Edition, which is Stefan Feld's 2011 design through GameFound. The game sits in the Board Game Geek top 20 with over 58,000 ratings. It's still in print. The original hasn't stopped being available.
But they re-released it anyway, with double-layered boards, custom wooden coins, redesigned artwork, fancy storage, and a new expansion called Vineyards. And it generated millions in funding. The mechanics are completely identical. Everything that made the game brilliant in 2011 is still there, but somehow that wasn't enough. We needed deluxification.
And here's the thing, I get it from a business standpoint. You know you have an audience. You're not betting $500,000 on a new designer's wild mechanic that might fail. You're investing $300,000 in making a deluxe version of something proven. The tariff situation made this calculation even more brutal. When U.S. tariffs spiked to 145% on Chinese manufacturing in April 2025, board game publishers faced economics that literally forced them to make these decisions. CMON lost $3 million in 2024 alone and announced massive layoffs through 2025.
And then they halted new game development entirely, stopped crowdfunding campaigns. Their business model just collapsed. Other publishers, like Underdog Games, laid off nearly their entire staff. The industry is contracting even as market reports say it's growing, because those growth numbers don't capture what's actually happening at the design and publishing level. We tracked the crowdfunding data. This is insane. Kickstarter tabletop funding has declined for 3 consecutive years. 2022 was down 12.4%, 2023 was down 4.3%, 2024 was down 2.7%, and between 2024 and 2025, it dropped another 7.5%.
But here's the really damning part. The average funding per campaign in 2025 hit $41,400. That's the lowest since 2014, which means individual projects aren't attracting the enthusiasm they used to. and yet people are still backing games constantly. It's this strange market where hype cycles faster, people chase novelty, but the average project is struggling. We watched Simon, the crowdfunding juggernaut that built its empire on massive campaigns like Zombicide and Hate, basically implode under tariff pressure. They went from dominating funding charts to pausing development entirely.
And Kickstarter didn't save board gaming. It monetized hype into a business model. That's the fundamental shift. Before crowdfunding, publishers faced real financial constraints. You had one shot to make a game work. A designer would spend years perfecting mechanics because the cost of failure was catastrophic. That pressure created this crucible where only the most carefully considered designs survived.
We're talking about games where bold mechanics and elegant design justified themselves, or they disappeared. And then everything changed around 2015-2016. Publishers realized they could generate massive campaign numbers by promising not just a game, but components, stretch goals, miniatures, deluxe everything. The psychology shifted. Instead of funding games, backers started funding promises. And then once publishers figured out they could release partially broken games, games with incomplete rulebooks, endless errata, mechanical imbalances, and just outsource playtesting to paying customers post-delivery, the entire incentive structure inverted.
We experienced this firsthand with titles that required 6 months of online rules clarifications before they played anything like their designer likely intended. That laziness wasn't born from incompetence. It was born from a system where rushing a game to market to capitalize on hype proved more profitable than proper development. And in our playthroughs, we noticed a creeping problem. Gameplay had become secondary to component quantity. The prospect of accumulating miniatures, elaborate cardboard tokens, and premium production values replaced meaningful interaction as the primary draw.
Okay, but let's look at what's actually dominating the market right now, because the composition is telling us something important. We looked at Board Game Geek's top-rated games for 2024 and 2025, and the pattern is clear. In 2024, you had a mix. Brass Birmingham, Pandemic Legacy Season 1, Gloomhaven, Spirit Island, some IP-based, but mostly games that succeeded through mechanical innovation or careful design refinement. By 2025, the composition shifted noticeably.
Slay the Spire, the board game, with video game IP, Lord of the Rings Fate of the Fellowship, which is literally Pandemic with Tolkien theming, designed by Matt Laycock, which is not bad, but it's not innovative. It's a proven system transplanted into a different setting. Star Wars Battle of Hoth, which adapts Richard Borg's Memoir 44 system almost verbatim. We played through it and recognized the core mechanics had been copied wholesale into Hoth's snowdrifts and ion cannons. The game works beautifully because Borg's design is bulletproof, but the innovation consists of replacing WW2 units with Star Wars vehicles.
So we're seeing IP-licensed games absolutely dominating the enthusiast rankings now. And simultaneously, we're seeing this massive reprint culture take over. We tracked dozens of these re-implementations through 2024 and 2025. Andromeda's Edge has a new take on Dwellings of Eldervale. The Lord of the Rings Dual Middle-earth Agricola Special Edition getting the deluxe treatment through Awaken Realms. It's like publishers increasingly chose this path over genuine design challenges because the economics are safer.
Oh my god, remember when we played Libertalia from 2024? We wanted to compare it to the original 2012 version because we had read that it was being reprinted with new artwork. We got the original edition, and immediately during our first session with the new one, it became obvious what had changed. The original had this beautiful asymmetry, where character abilities varied wildly. Some felt genuinely broken if you didn't understand them. Strategic tension came from that spikiness. The pirate, the duchess, the bishop, they all did wildly different things, and that was the point.
Yeah, and then in our sessions with the 2024 reprint, everything was smoothed out, balanced to perfect equilibrium. The controversial mechanics disappeared. It's like someone went through and said, what if we removed everything that might upset someone on social media? And look, the new version plays beautifully. It's fair, it's balanced, nothing is broken. But that's exactly the problem. It also isn't necessary. Nothing about it makes you feel alive the way the original does. It's competent. That's the highest compliment we could give it.
And that's happening across the entire industry. We looked at game releases and discovered 6,300 new games came out in 2025, excluding expansions. That's roughly 17 new games every single day. But only 273 games achieved a 7.6 rating or higher with at least 50 reviews. That means 95.6% of releases failed to achieve even moderate critical recognition. We're drowning in product, but starving for quality. The market has become completely disconnected from what players actually consider good.
And this is where innovation comes in, because everyone talks about how board games need innovation, but innovation has become both overrated and incredibly rare, which is a weird paradox to live in. Overrated because you can't have constant mechanical revolution in a mature industry. Just like video games stopped revolutionizing every year after the big breakthroughs, Half-Life 2 revolutionized first-person shooters, but the industry hasn't produced constant mechanical revolution since. Instead, we've seen refinement punctuated by occasional breakthroughs.
Contemporary design is explicitly risk-averse. In our sessions with recent acclaimed games, we kept seeing the same pattern: designers combining existing mechanics in fresh contexts, rather than inventing new ones. Galactic Cruise from 2025 doesn't introduce revolutionary mechanics, but through our sessions, we discovered it successfully synthesized existing systems into a cohesive package: space opera with area control, simultaneous action selection, and a clever modular board design. It's beautiful execution, not innovation.
And designers are consciously playing it safe because controversial mechanics don't test well with focus groups. Nobody wants their game labeled broken on social media. The result is safe, competent, balanced games that never offend and never inspire. Compare that to what Reiner Knizia was doing. He assumed players had intelligence and wouldn't hold your hand. The learning curve was steep, but the depth was genuine. You could spend decades with a Knizia game and still find new strategies.
And actually, Knizia himself acknowledged this shift in recent interviews. He basically said that modern audiences have short attention spans. They expect quicker game endings. They want more things happening simultaneously, like modern movies where if you don't have 3 people in a scene in the first minute, it's boring. He adapted his designs accordingly, which is exactly the problem. It's not that Knizia forgot how to design brilliant games, it's that the market demanded he simplify for broader appeal. The designer changed because the incentive structure changed.
Which brings us to crowdfunding's collapse, because crowdfunding was supposed to democratize all this. It was supposed to let designers bypass traditional gatekeepers and bring unique visions to market. In our experience tracking campaign trends, backing games used to feel thrilling because you were supporting genuine creativity. Today, waiting for retail release often provides better value than backing at the source. Late pledge systems were designed to extend campaigns, but really they just shifted the timeline so manufacturing delays aligned with retail demand. You're pre-ordering a game with added uncertainty and calling it crowdfunding.
The magic disappeared when publishers realized they could monetize enthusiasm without requiring product quality or meaningful innovation. We saw CMON go from being this massive crowdfunding force to completely halting development. Other publishers followed similar patterns. Instead of betting everything on a massive campaign, companies started releasing smaller products through established retail channels. The crowdfunding business model became unsustainable. What used to feel revolutionary now feels predatory, selling established audiences something they already know exists.
GameFound, the crowdfunding alternative that positioned itself against Kickstarter, accumulated $156 million in 2024 funding, which is substantial. Yet per-project average funding continued its decline across both platforms. We analyzed campaigns from 2014 to 2025 and observed clear deterioration. Projects that funded at $100,000 plus with enthusiasm now struggle to reach $50,000. The ratio of successful projects to attempted projects has declined. Many campaigns never fund at all, disappearing quietly from the platform. The platform that was supposed to save game boarding has become a place where gatekeeping exists purely through market mathematics.
And look, we've found glimmers of resistance. Spirit Island, released in 2017, is still in the Board Game Geek Top 20 based on reputation and organic growth rather than marketing push. That game is built on solid design thinking. The spirit abilities are asymmetrical, the mechanics reward creativity, and the player agency is genuine. We played through several scenarios and kept discovering new strategic approaches. The game respects your intelligence. SETI, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, released in 2024, represents original design thinking applied to a compelling theme, a genuinely unique conceptual space.
Those exceptions prove the rule, though. They've become rare enough to be remarkable, when once they were the standard. The industry continues consolidating around safe choices. Asmodee continues acquiring smaller publishers. Z-Man Games, which published Pandemic and many classics, operates under Asmodee ownership now. Independent publishers struggle to compete when Asmodee can throw distribution muscle behind IP-licensed products. The market has consolidated precisely when hobbyists believed crowdfunding would democratize it.
And here's what really troubles me. We're producing more games than ever before, but the quality of critical recognition isn't improving. Average ratings for top-tier releases actually stayed relatively flat or improved marginally, 8.103 in 2024 versus 8.188 in 2025. But that tells us something more dangerous. Our best games represent refinement rather than revolution. They're masters working in established genres, not pioneers opening new frontiers. The problem isn't the quality of the best games. The problem is the best games are still just refinement.
So, if we're thinking about what this means for someone listening to this in 2026, here's my take. More games will be published, more price increases will hit as tariffs continue affecting manufacturing, more independent properties will become licensed IP, more deluxe reprints will fill shelves, crowdfunding will stabilize at lower volume, but the industry structure that enabled the Golden Age, the financial pressure, the scarcity, the risk-taking, is fundamentally transformed. The market isn't collapsing, it's changing.
And the next renaissance will probably emerge from small press publishers, print-on-demand services, and designer-led projects operating at the margins, not from Asmodee subsidiaries or major crowdfunding campaigns, because there's still enormous talent out there. There are still designers capable of brilliant work, and Tables with Friends will still generate that magic. But the industry that powered the Golden Age has definitively ended. The conditions that made the Golden Age possible no longer exist.
Look, I know this probably sounds like we're being cynical, and maybe we are a little bit, but we've spent the past few weeks playing through classic games that shaped us, looking at current releases with fresh eyes, tracking industry data, and it's hard to ignore what's happening. The market is growing, revenues are expanding, but the soul of what made board gaming special is increasingly elsewhere. The scarcity that made each new release exciting? Gone. The design pressure that demanded excellence? Replaced by market testing and focus groups.
Yeah, and that's not to say the games stop being fun or that communities stop forming around tables. That magic never goes away. The experience of gathering with friends and experiencing a brilliant game together, that transcends industry structure. But the era where bold design and mechanical innovation were rewarded by a market desperate for novelty, that's genuinely over. We're not exaggerating. We tracked the data, we played the games, we watched the shifts happen in real time. The golden age of board gaming did exist. It was real. It shaped so many of us. And in 2026, we're clearly living in what comes after.
So thanks for hanging with us while we geeked out about this. We know it's kind of a bummer of a conclusion, but we think it's important to understand what happened and how the industry transformed, because understanding the past helps us figure out where we go from here. We're Board Game Critique, and we'll see you in the next one.
And look, if you've got board games you love, those games are still brilliant. Nothing about board gaming being in transition diminishes the experience of playing Spirit Island with friends or discovering a Knizia classic for the first time. The games endure even when the industry shifts. The mechanics are still there. The design thinking is still there. Go play something beautiful this weekend. We'll catch you next time.